and it's Happy Tuesday time. It is Training Tuesday, my friends, and thank you for joining me again. We were off last week, so as some of you know, I was out celebrating my birthday last week, so we did not have Training Tuesday. However, I am back again today, and I am looking forward to spending a little time with you guys tonight. Now, I'm going to preface this with one, I have a cold. So I did just like suck down a throat lozenge a minute ago. So hopefully I will be fine, but if I have to pause to cough or take a drink of water, you understand why. And if you've seen my Facebook post on my personal page, you know that like my mother has been taking very good care of me. I've been traveling this past week. I'm actually going to talk to you about that tonight as we talk about our inner gremlin, that inner critic voice that we're going to deal with. That's tonight's topic. But in traveling, I caught this cold, so I'm in a hotel room. By the way, there is no great backdrop in a hotel room for these things. So you are staring at my room. I'm sorry I don't have a prettier view for you, but this is what I'm working with today. But I've been trapped in here for the last 2 days fighting this cold because, of course, I don't want to give it to my parents. And my mother has been very kindly bringing food to my door, which has been amazing. So anyway, cold is getting better. I am happy to be here joining you guys tonight talking about the inner gremlin, the inner critic, the voice in our head that tells us all these terrible things. And it's Assertive April. And Assertive April is something that I've been doing the last couple of years where for all the trainings for the month of April, focus on how we really step out and be loud and be proud of who we are, right? And we do that without apology. And funny enough, a little experience I had this past weekend really ties into that. So tonight I'm going to share that with you. And unlike most of my other trainings, you guys who join me every week know that it's, 3 tips for speaking with your voice and 5 steps to asking for a raise and all these things that we do cover, and they're still valuable trainings. Tonight it's not going to be quite along those lines. Tonight I am going to give you ways to start navigating, right, that inner critic voice. But I want to do it a little bit differently simply because there aren't 3 easy steps to quelling that inner critic. It doesn't exist. So instead, we're going to talk about perspective with that inner critic voice and how we can start shifting our perspective around that. So, hello, ladies. I see Christina's here, Tracy's here, Joyce is here. Thank you guys for joining tonight. I'm happy to see Jill's here. Hey, Jill. So for those of you who are new to the group, welcome to Training Tuesday. As always, I'd love for you guys to say hello in the chat as these fine ladies just have. Let us know where you are listening in from and participate. The more you share with each other, with me, questions that you have, or just stories and ideas you want to share as we're going along, the more interactive it is, the more fun it is for all of us. So I definitely invite you and ask you to do that. And if you're new, welcome. We're here every week, and we're here to talk about issues around building our leadership skills and confidence, and sometimes just managing to get through the day is important. So I'm happy to have you all here. My name is Natalie Hahn. I am CEO of Dirty Girls Consulting, and I am your coach. And I see Miss Jackie is here. Hey, Jackie, how are you doing? All right, guys, thank you for joining us tonight. So we're going to start with this little incident of mine from this weekend. As you guys know, a lot of you know, especially if you've been working with me for a while, I have a coach. I think all good coaches should have a coach. It's how we continue not only to work on our skills and things like that, but it's how we actually develop and evolve as people, right? So I have a coach. I'm always working on myself, working on my business. It also aligns with my own values. I believe that part of not just being a good coach, but being a good person is being aware of what triggers me, of how I respond to things, and being able to take ownership of that so that I'm the one who is managing and driving my life. I'm not just at the reaction of patterns and the reaction of childhood trauma and things like that. So yet another reason why we keep this support system in our lives of having coaches and therapists and people like this. Now, I was in a conference this past week, and some of you saw the video that my coach double dog dared me to post. So Joyce, I appreciate you clarifying the double dog dare. I've not heard of it and didn't know what it was. So And it was all about kind of putting yourself out there. The theme for the conference this weekend was to see and be seen. It was kind of both of those, right? To see, to have awareness, to watch, to observe, to absorb, but also to be seen, right? To put ourselves out there in among our community, our friends, our different groups, and let them see us for who we are. Now, my normal classroom behavior, which is the same as my normal conference behavior as an adult, is I sit in the back of the class and I take a whole bunch of notes because I'm a note taker and I'm an audio learner, so I like to listen. And I absorb. I don't really put myself out there. You know, I wasn't the kid in class who always raised her hand because she had all the answers, even if I thought I had all the answers. That wasn't me. I wanted to manage how I was seen and what I was all about. So I sat at the back of the class. I took my studious notes. I was a good girl. I studied hard. And as an adult, same thing. I still do the same thing. Amanda is my coach, and Amanda made sure that that didn't happen. So in this conference of hers, we had assigned seating. My assigned seating was not at the back of the group, not at the back of the room. It was literally the very first seat in the front, like right in front of her. And not only was I in the front, right at front, but she was filming this. So there were cameras. There was one camera in the center aisle behind me shooting straight up, and there was another camera in the corner. And every time I turned my head like 45 degrees, I could see the damn camera on me, on her. Like she was here walking and moving around like I was always in the line of sight. So that causes a little bit of, oh great, like damn, right? I'm here in front of everything. Which also, by the way, puts a tamper on your ability to get up and go get coffee at the back of the room or the bio breaks, just saying. So not only am I in front of the camera, but she's calling me out to participate. She will stop and give me the eye until I answer a question. But I'm in a room full of coaches, right? I don't know these coaches. Some of these coaches I've met online before, and it was great to meet them in person. Others I had never seen before, didn't know them. So while it was a safe environment in a lot of ways, it was also a bit of an unknown environment. I really didn't know these people, know them well. The only person I'd met before and that I knew was my coach, Amanda, who was running this whole program. Now, the exercise on Saturday, which is the root of all this, I'm giving you all this context so you can feel me, is really why I'm giving it. The exercise on Saturday was to answer the question, what am I weird about? We had to write it down. What are we weird about? So I thought about it. What am I weird about? Not what makes me unique. Not what makes me special. Not, what's a little quirk thing I have. It was what makes you weird. The assumption being apparently that we're all weird. And when you think about that word weird, it has connotations, right? The weird kid at school. The weird kid that nobody sat with, the weird one nobody talked to, right? There was just something undefinably odd about that person who was weird. And so I had to sit there and think about what makes me weird. And I'm sure all of you can think of a bunch of things, but I sat down, I wrote down my weird statement. I am weird because, and I wrote it down. And I was actually feeling pretty comfortable with it. I was like, yeah, it does make me weird, but I'm also pretty good with this. So for the first time, being that I'm in front of the room and that Amanda's already been calling me out, I volunteered to share. I don't do that, but I did. I was like, I can do this one. I can cover my weird. I'm good with that. And my kids will tell you all the time, not only how weird I am, but that I encourage them to share their weird and to be, open about that. So Amanda says, great, and she puts the microphone in front of me to share my weird with the world. And I start explaining how, maybe it's not that weird to everybody, but, and she goes, no, wait, what, no. She goes, just say it. And I said, okay, but, and then I start explaining a little bit more about how I was raised and my background, and she keeps stopping me, and we do this like 2 or 3 times. And finally she goes, listen, the only words you are to say is, I am weird because. I am weird because. And I wasn't allowed to make the excuses, right? Couch it, give it framework. Have you guys ever done this? Have you ever done that whole, you're going to say something, but before you say it, you got to give all this like explanation and rationale behind why and the what and the, got to position it just right. Have you guys done that? Because that's what I was doing. I was trying to create an environment in which I would launch my weird that would make it as safe as possible. And she wouldn't let me do it. She kept stripping away. And she said, no, the only words you say are, I am weird because, and you finish the sentence. And I said, okay. And I took a breath, and you know what happened? I started to cry. I started to cry. She stripped away every possibility I had of making sure this was going to be acceptable to everybody. And I just got scared. And now I'm standing because of course she makes me stand up with the microphone and the cameras on and all these people I don't know watching. And she makes me say it again and again. Now, 10, 15 seconds before this, I thought I was fine. I was like, I can say my weird, it's fine. I thought I was fine. And then when I couldn't present it in the way that I wanted to present it, suddenly I was panicked. Have you had that happen to you? Where like this wave of emotion kind of hits you and you're like, oh, I don't know where that came from. Because that was my first thought was, oh my God, I don't know why I'm about to cry. But I did kind of know. I knew that I was scared, right? So, and I think sometimes, I mean, it's maybe not the first time that's happened to me where I'm hit with a wave of emotion and I'm like, oh. I think it happens to us, right? I think it happens to some of us sometimes. But I was in panic mode and I had nowhere to go because there were cameras and people and my coach is standing there with a microphone and she's a little thing. She's like 5'2" or 5'3" with heels on, but she's standing there with a microphone and she's not letting me go anywhere. And she made me say it again. So now I'm trying to breathe, right? You guys, you know that every Training Tuesday, what do I tell you when we're working through stressful? To breathe, right? We're working through our stress. Breathe and ground yourself. Do you know how hard it is to close your eyes and breathe with a room full of people staring at you and cameras and 2 cameramen? But I'm trying to breathe, I'm trying to center myself. I'm trying not to get the hiccups, right? And I'm trying to say this. And then the real fun hits. The real fun hits because I get the sweats. Like a big old hot flash hits right then. And now I can feel sweat dripping. Oh, it's a good time. Right? Perimenopause, menopause, I don't know where I'm at, but not fun. And right then it said, here is a good time to just have the sweats. So that's going on. And I think I had to say my I am weird because statement about 7 or 8 times before she finally let me sit down. 7 or 8 times. And I don't know if she finally believed me. I don't know if she took pity on me. I know that when I sat down, I felt completely exhausted. And 5 or 10 minutes later, it was lunch break, and I immediately hightailed it to the ladies' room. And I just kind of sat there gripping the sink, and I'm washing my face, and I'm breathing. And I'm trying to process, like, why was that so scary? Why was that so scary for me? And we are going to get into that. That's part of giving us a reframe and some perspective on that inner critic voice, right? That inner critic that was like, danger, 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 be careful. So Joyce says, my panic would have been expressed with an angry refusal to say anything, which is what we want to do, right? We want to shut down. That's part of what our inner critic, right? That gremlin wants us to do. It wants to protect us. It wants us to shut down. It wants us to run. It wants us not to say anything. It wants us not to volunteer because it's all a risk. Now, there's a few things in here, though, that need to be pointed out, which is I was in a really low-risk environment, really low risk. I was with other coaches. I was with my peers, and I was still afraid. Now, the ironic thing is that most of you guys know what my weird is. So I appreciate that that you guys understand kind of what I was going through. And yes, definitely felt vulnerable, Sue. It was just scary. It was just scary. But in that moment, with all that emotion kind of overwhelming you, you can't always pinpoint. I could not pinpoint exactly why I was scared or what it was. It took some processing to try to sort that out. And our reaction is what? It's fight, flight, or freeze, right? Our reactions when we are under high stress come into fight, flight, or freeze. And I was just stuck. I really couldn't do any of them. I was super on the spot. So the irony is that do you guys know what my weird is? Do you know what it was I was trying to tell this room of almost strangers that my weird was? I'm happy for you to guess in the chat what it was. But the funny thing is you guys do know what it is. If you've been in this group for more than a month, let's just say, you know what it is. And you guys have accepted me for it. You've asked questions about it. You've been curious about it. What you don't know is how hard it was for me to start inserting that part of me into the group, to start sharing that part of me, even with you guys. And you guys are like my safe space, right? This is my dirty girl community. But even my inner circle didn't know for a long time I had done this, and have just been getting like pieces of it as we've gone along. So I want you to think about this for yourself. Can you think of something that is important to you, that's a part of you, but that you still hide from others? And maybe you hide just from a few people. Like we tend to hide from the people who are closest to us, right? Because that's where the most risk is. So that's where we hide. And it might seem to you like a really small, inane thing, yet if you're hiding it, if you're not sharing it, it still falls in that category of, does this make me weird? Really? You guys can't think of my weird? I'll tell you what I did. I had to stand up in front of that room, and I had to say, my name is Natalie, and I am a certified chakra healer. And you guys know that about me. I mean, half of you at least are going, oh yeah, we knew that. You know, you were all in my chakra training a few months ago, right? We did that on Training Tuesday for 7 weeks, right? And some of you might be going, oh, I didn't know that. And others might be going, what the hell are chakras? And that's fine. That's fine. But to say that in my loud voice, in a room full of strangers, was, well, it petrified me, apparently, because it made me cry. How is that weird? See, okay, this is why we're going to talk about perspective, right? The whole why is that weird and that's not weird. I love you guys, honestly, for that response, and that's why this is my safe place. But there is a reason why it's weird for me, and this is the perspective, right? I want you to think about what your weird was, because I had that same reaction. When other people in the room started saying, well, this is my weird, I would sit back and go, well, that's not weird. Can I, and I thought, I wish I had thought of their weird instead of my weird, because their weird I could have said and not thought it was weird at all, and not felt that fear that I felt, right? So yeah, it may not be weird to you, but for me, it was a risk to say it out loud. And the thing was, when I said it, I was then filled with a room full of coaches who were now curious about me, who were completely supportive, who were wanting to have a conversation and learn more. And there was that judgment that I was afraid of. It wasn't there. And you're exactly right, Jackie. One woman's weird is another woman's normal. Christine, I would love to hear how your appointment goes, like what you experience with that and how that goes. And then when we get together next, we'll talk more about that. But yeah, it's a funny thing when you are afraid of being judged. And that's what the voice in your head is all about. It's all about judgment. And what that inner critic or what that inner voice tells you is that you're weird. Your weird is what keeps you separate. So I'm going to ask you guys, what's your weird? If you were asked the same question, finish the sentence, my name is, and I am weird because, what would you say? And you're welcome to share it in the chat because this is a safe space and you will get nothing but support and curiosity, I have no doubt. And you are welcome not to share it too if you're not ready, and that's okay. Because now that I've been there, like Saturday, a couple days ago, I get how scary it can be, especially when, as I was, you are unprepared. You are unprepared for just how scary it is. Because I really did stand up to say my weird and think it was going to be totally fine. And when like I said, when I was stripped away of all the tools of being able to position it exactly the right way, that's when it became scary. So if you put your weird in the chat, I promise you nothing but love and support and some curiosity. But otherwise, you now know what my terrifying sentence was on Saturday. Sorry, I do have this cold. Okay, so the perspective I want us to have around this and why I'm telling you this whole story about my meltdown is because one of the lessons we learned this past weekend came from a gentleman named Brady McCarty. He was one of our guest speakers, and he speaks on communications and psychology and understanding people, and has done a whole bunch of studying around this, and he was fun. And he gave us 2 points, kind of 2 rules that I want you guys to take away tonight. So I want you to get your pen and paper ready because these are the 2 things I want you to remember. So, oh, but people are sharing, so I do want to pause for that. Jackie says, my weird is that I don't have many close personal friends, just family. It's scary to think. Oh, hold on, it's moving. It's scary to feel like you should have a group of close friends, but for me, I have other people. Yeah, you know, I totally hear you, Jackie, and I totally feel that. Absolutely. And nobody can decide what's the right amount, right, of people in our lives that support us. If you have what you need, then you have everything. Sue, my weird, don't touch me, don't touch my stuff. Oh, I get that. I get that too, especially the don't touch me. Don't touch me. Unless I touch you first. Don't touch me. I totally understand that. See, and again, our weirds are not necessarily other people's weirds, right? Joyce, the newest one is I may be aphantastic. I don't know what that is. Aphantastic. So if you'd care to define that, Joyce, now I'm curious. Okay, so let me tell you about Brady's 2 rules that I want you guys to keep in mind and to write down, and we'll see if Joyce clarifies that more. Rule number 1 is every adult is the byproduct of childhood suffering and childhood rewards. And yes, I'm going to break that down. But the statement was every adult is the byproduct of their childhood suffering and childhood rewards. And rule number 2 is that every adult is the product of their environment. Now, here's how I'm going to break this down. Okay, Joyce, I'm going to break it down in a second. I want to get back to Joyce. I can't see things in my head. They call a blind mind's eye. Oh, that's interesting. So, Joyce, you can't actually visualize things in your head. You can see them, but you can't actually take the concept visually in your head. I've not heard of that. Wow. I don't know if that makes you weird, though. But I hear what you're saying. But I can see why that might make you feel like you are somehow different or separated from everybody else. And that's the funny thing, though, about things that happen in our head only happen in our heads, right? Other people don't necessarily have access to that. That's interesting. I'm going to look up more about that. All right, let's get to our 2 rules. Every adult is the byproduct of their childhood suffering and childhood rewards. In other words, patterns. Patterns from how we were raised, right? We are trained, especially us women, to be what? Good girls. You hear me talk about it all the time. We are good girls. We are trained from when we are very, very, very young to follow the rules, to do what we're told, to be nice to others, to be nurturing. We get into school and we follow the teacher's directions and we make good grades and we get rewarded, right? When we're good at home and we're taking care of our siblings or we're taking care of our parents, we get rewarded. We are trained into patterns of behavior. And they are sometimes our childhood suffering because sometimes they don't fit with who we are, but we're trained into this mode of being. And childhood rewards, right? We're Pavlovian. We are rewarded for certain behaviors, so we keep adopting those behaviors. And by the time we're adults, these things to us are like how things are. These are how things are supposed to be. They're patterns. And then rule number 2, every adult is the product of their environment. So I want you to think about the environment you're raised in. Some of us were raised in very strict families, some in not very strict families. Some of us were raised in religious communities, some of us not, right? Depending on where in the country or where in the world you were raised, you will have different cultural norms and ideas. All of these things impact us and they form us. They form us into the adults we are so that we are showing up, we are behaving the way that we are. So I'm going to take this back to my gremlin. I'm going to break this down for you so you can tie it back to why, when I say my weird is that I am a certified chakra healer, why that was so terrifying for me. So my childhood suffering and rewards, right, if we look at it that way, circulated around 2 things. Achievement and intelligence, which you guys have heard me talk about before. My family was all about the good grades, make the good grades, be smart, study hard. And appropriate, I don't know a better way to phrase this, appropriate representation in the world. Appearances. And I don't necessarily mean that in as shallow a sense as it sounds. So I'm going to explain that one. Now, I am not bashing my childhood at all. I had an extremely fortunate childhood. I had opportunities that many kids don't have. So when I talk about childhood suffering and rewards, I'm not talking about the fact that we've all been abused and traumatized as kids. Because in a way, that's life. In a way, we all have, and that is life. What I'm talking about is how the conditions of our family and our lives have formed us. So for me, the paradigm of my childhood was, the environmental paradigm was, every time I walked out the door, I carried the burden of representing the United States of America. And I took that very seriously. So what do I mean by that? And why would I say something like that, especially as a kid? So my childhood cultural environment was this. My father was a diplomat with the State Department. I was what we called an SBD, an SDB, a State Department brat. And as a State Department brat, we moved from country to country to country. And the one thing that was grilled into us State Department brats was, when you live in a foreign country, you represent America in that country. Everything you do, what you wear, what you say, how you behave, everything you do is observed by the host country, and you are representative of America. And I took that role very seriously, and I carried that burden so that I very much paid attention to what is happening in the country or the world that I'm in. What are their expectations of me as an American? Now, keying myself into others to figure out what their expectations of me are, how can I become the best representation of what they expect? Neither of those 2 things have anything to do with me. My personality, my charm, my interests. Those had everything to do with my environment. What does this host country, what do these people expect from me as an American? And then what can I do to be the best possible American girl in this country? Those were the patterns and habits I started adopting, because that was my job, according to my parents, according to their job, according to the State Department. Now, what was me is, because I'm competitive, it was, how am I going to be the best possible version of that, better than any other American girl in this country? That part was me. Very competitive. What it means is that there was a look, there was a tone, there was a behavior, there were ideas that all came along with this packaging of who I was supposed to be growing up. There's a persona to being the perfect American girl overseas, who, by the way, also lives in a family where grades are everything, good grades. So when I think about my family conditioning about making good grades and being an academic, and then my cultural conditioning, which is about being a representative of an entire country, so always being on your best behavior, well, guess what? Just didn't fit with my weird side. And none of those had anything to do with me personally. So, me being crystal loving, astrology seeking, tarot card reading, chakra healer doesn't really fit with diplomat's daughter, Harvard educated corporate executive. But that's also me. I love actually my corporate work and marketing. I loved studying at Harvard. I love my clothes. I love high heels. I love makeup. And I also love being barefoot in my hippie skirts, doing belly dancing and sound baths. They're all me. So, how do I reconcile these? I don't know that I have yet. Because I think if I had, I would have had the meltdown I had on Saturday actually having to do that. Looking like my professional corporate coach self, and yet speaking what I felt was my weird hidden hippie self. Right? So for the longest time, this weird side of me was the secret side. It was the side that over time, as I got older, with certain friends, they got to know pieces of. My kids know her. My kids probably know her better than anyone. My closest friends know her mostly. Truthfully, some days I'm not even sure I know her. That's still an exploration, and I'm okay with that. Because my weekend meltdown forced me to look at that gremlin voice that said, don't go there. Good girls don't go there. Intelligent, successful girls who know how to deal with the world don't go there. They don't do those things. That's going to make you look stupid. It's going to make you look flaky. It's going to make you look irrational. You can't have that. You don't want that, right? It's the gremlin voice that says that weird thing about you is what stops people from loving you. Ouch. Right? Ouch. That weird side is what keeps people away, saying, oh, that's the weird girl. She's weird. And even though logically we can say, look, if they don't love this side of me, they're not my people. They're not my people, and I have to let them go. It doesn't stop the ouch. It also doesn't stop the fact that you might have to let them go, but it doesn't stop the ouch, does it? Letting go hurts. But you have to let go in order to let the other stuff in. If I were to keep people around me who would not accept the crystal loving, tarot card reading, chakra healing side, then I would never have that side to play with. That side would never see light. And I would instead be killing a part of myself. So when you think about your gremlin voice, I want you to think about what it's protecting you from. So I'm not here tonight with the 3 quick tips or the 5-step process. I'm here to say that gremlin voice is protecting you from the things you're afraid of. But sometimes the things we're afraid of are exactly the things we need to do if we're going to move forward, if we're going to become holy in and of ourselves. This is the process that I work through with my clients. Ladies, you guys come to me with I'm transitioning in my career, or I've become an empty nester and I'm trying to figure out what's next, or I've just taken on a promotion, I need to know how to handle that, and you do, and we do. But at the root of all of this, for every single one of you, the conversation we end up having and spending the most time on in our coaching is, how do I manage that voice in my head that's holding me back, that's trying to keep me safe, but in keeping me safe is keeping me in a place that I don't want to be anymore. It doesn't serve me anymore. So tonight I'm going to leave you with this. We are all a byproduct. We are all a byproduct of our childhood suffering and our childhood rewards. And we are all a product of our childhood environment. And the more we can have that perspective for others, the more we can show them compassion for how they're showing up. And when we can do that for others, we can do that for ourselves. So that the next time somebody is yelling at you, or the next time somebody comes to you with what their weird is, and you're like, that's not so weird, right? We can have a little bit of kindness for the fact of it wasn't scary for me, but I can see that it's scary for them. Whatever emotions being triggered from them right now is part of their childhood packaging that has brought them to this point and this space. And that's a gremlin that's yelling at me. That's a gremlin that's crying right now, that's triggering that. Now let's figure out how to move past it. But most importantly, it's to show that kindness and that self-awareness and acceptance to yourself. Because once you know what the childhood suffering and rewards and the childhood environment look like, now you can step back and go, oh, now I get why I have these patterns. Now I understand why I have these reactions. And now I can consciously choose that maybe I don't want to have these reactions anymore. Or maybe I don't want to show up that way anymore. And I don't have to. Because that's part of a past pattern. It doesn't have to be my current pattern. So thank you guys for joining me tonight. That is what I want to leave you with. If you are looking to work through that inner critic voice, get it to the next place where you're having that more open dialogue. Find a next action step where you can get a little closer to the goal of who you want to be rather than stuck in the patterns of where you are. Then that's where I invite you for the Dirty Girl Mini Dig. That is a 15-minute coaching conversation between you and me, all about you. Where you're at, what your inner critic is saying, and how do we move you closer to quieting that voice and really taking ownership of everything that you are, so that you're not reactive and triggered by the voice, but that you can look at it square in the face and say, I get you, but today I'm going to make a different choice. So if you'd like to have that conversation, drop the word dig in the chat. It's a free coaching conversation. There's no sales going on. This is just about moving you forward. Drop the word dig in the chat. I will reach out to you and we will schedule a time to chat. So I want to go back for just a second and look at some of the comments here that you guys said, because I didn't get to see them all. Jackie, I think I went back. Jackie says, we're turning the meaning of weird on its head. Yeah, which is exactly what right. The gremlin, because exactly that, we all have different perceptions, right? What your gremlin tells you is weird is just not weird to anybody else. Or it might be weird to other people, and that might still be okay. Right? Christine, I'm not weird, I'm me. Oh, I love you, Christine. That's a fabulous thing to say. My family thinks I'm weird, but that's because I'm a riot. Yes, you are. I asked for unicycles and marionettes for Christmas. Oh, that's awesome. Christine, that's one thing I've always loved about you, though. You've always done you. You've always been very confident and very much you do you. And that's a fabulous thing to have that confidence. And that's the kind of confidence we should all have, to unapologetically be who we are. It's interesting that being an SBD isn't your word. You know, Joyce, it is kind of interesting that I think because that's so much of my identity growing up, that the SBD part was normal for me. It was the stuff that fell out of that identity that was weird. That was what was ingrained in me. It's a good point, because the rest of the world would go, you're who? A boat is safe in the harbor, but that's not what boats are for. Oh, that's so true. I don't know if that's a quote from something or if that's your quote, but if it is your quote, you should frame it. That is absolutely true. It's not what we're for. And that's not what we're here for. We're not here to play it safe. Right? Everybody on this planet has something to give to the world. Everything that we do impacts somebody else. Every choice I make, it not only impacts me, it impacts my kids, it impacts my family, it impacts my friends, it impacts you guys. We all have such a much bigger impact on the world than we acknowledge or recognize. But it's true, which is why I think it's so important that we own it, that we own ourselves and how we show up, which means we go back and we own the childhood trauma and the childhood environment and say, I get that's how that got me here. Now, where do I want to go? And we own that. Well, Joyce, if you can't remember who said it, I think you should just claim it and frame it and put it on a meme, put it on Facebook, and just be famous. Why not? So thank you guys for joining me tonight for Training Tuesday. As always, a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for living with my coughing, rasping, voice clearing night. My mother brought me a peanut butter sandwich today, which was awesome. She brought me chicken soup yesterday. She brought me pho last night. So Vietnamese pho is like food of gods. And in our family, we believe it is the all-healing medicine. Like if anything ails you, have pho. And today I got peanut butter and chips and flan and a Thai popsicle. So yeah, I'm being taken care of. You guys have a great night. Thank you for joining me this week, and I will see you as I always do next week on Training Tuesday.